what you wanted. Maybe it was the job, maybe it was the relationship, maybe it was the number in your bank account, the apartment, the degree, the recognition, the body you worked for, the goal you told yourself would finally make everything feel right. You got it. And for a moment, a few days, maybe a few weeks, something felt like it was going to work. And then it faded. The thing that was supposed to fix everything started to feel like everything else. Ordinary, background. Already part of the scenery that you move through without noticing. Underneath the ordinary, where the feeling was supposed to live, there was something you did not expect. Emptiness. A quiet, confusing hollow that you cannot fully name or explain. Because you have everything you said you wanted and still it is there. You are not ungrateful. You are not broken, and you are not alone. What you are experiencing is one of the most consistent, well-documented and ancient features of the human nervous system, and the real reason for it is far stranger and more revealing than you think. It begins with dopamine, the reward itself, but the anticipation of reward. This is the distinction that changes everything, and it comes from decades of research by neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz at the University of Cambridge. He spent years studying how dopamine-producing neurons in the brain fire in response to reward, and what he found completely overturned the way scientists understood motivation. He expected to find that dopamine fired when an animal received a reward, a food pellet, pleasurable stimulus. What he found instead was that dopamine fired most powerfully not at the moment of reward, but in anticipation of it. The neurons spiked when the animal learned that a reward was coming, not when the reward actually arrived. And when the reward arrived as expected, neurons went quiet. The dopamine system, Schultz concluded, is not a reward system in the conventional sense. It is a prediction and anticipation system. It is designed to drive you toward things, not to make you feel satisfied when you get them. Finding reframes everything you have ever experienced about desire and fulfillment. The high, the excitement, the energy, the sense that everything matters and you are moving towards something important. All of that is dopamine in anticipation. The moment the outcome is achieved, prediction is confirmed, and the dopamine signal collapses. Not because the thing was not worth getting, but because the system was never designed to reward arrival. It was designed to drive pursuit. Your ancestors did not survive by being satisfied. In the environment your nervous system was built for, 100,000 years ago, satisfactions was a luxury that could kill you. A human who felt deeply content after catching food might not get up the next morning to hunt again. And who achieved a goal and rested in the achievement might not prepare for the next threat, the next winter, the next season of scarcity. The brain that kept pushing, kept scanning for the next thing, kept generating a low-level sense that something was still missing. Brain kept its owner alive. The feeling of not quite enough was not a malfunction. It was a survival engine. Your nervous system was selected, across hundreds of thousands of years, specifically for the capacity to feel unsatisfied after getting what you wanted. You were built to want more, not out of greed or ingratitude, but because the organisms that felt permanently satisfied after each achievement did not outsurvive the organisms that kept reaching for the next one. This mechanism has a name in psychology. It is called hedonic adaptation. The research on it is both rigorous and somewhat brutal in its implications. Psychologist Philip Brickman at Northwestern University conducted one of the most cited studies on the subject in 1978, comparing the reported happiness levels of lottery winners who had recently experienced a catastrophic accident resulting in paralysis, and a control group of ordinary people. His findings were startling. The lottery winners, who had received what most people would consider an enormous positive life event, had no greater happiness than the control group. And the accident survivors, within a relatively short period after the event, reported happiness levels that were not dramatically lower than the control group either. Both groups had returned, or were returning, a baseline level of well-being that appeared relatively stable regardless of circumstance. Brickman called this the hedonic treadmill. The idea is simple and devastating. Your emotional response to life events, positive and negative, tends to return to a baseline over time. As you worked for, the house you saved for, the relationship you longed for, the achievement you sacrificed for, each of these produces an initial spike, and then the adaptation process begins. The new reality becomes the new normal, and the baseline reasserts itself within weeks or months of the event. This is why you can look at a version of your life that your earlier self would have found extraordinary and feel ordinary in it. Not because you are ungrateful or failure to appreciate what you have, as your nervous system has absorbed the new reality and recalibrated around it. What was once the object of desire is now simply the context of your existence. And the gap that dopamine generated between where you were and where you wanted to be, that gave your days meaning and forward momentum, has closed. And with it, so has the feeling, But there is another layer to this that goes beyond dopamine and hedonic adaptation. Teacher Kenan Sheldon at the University of Missouri has spent decades studying what actually contributes to lasting well-being, and his research reveals a distinction that most people intuitively sense but rarely articulate, and has found that goals can be broadly divided into two categories: extrinsic goals and intrinsic goals. Extrinsic goals are outcomes that exist outside of you: status, money, appearance, others' approval, achievements that can be measured by external standards. Intrinsic goals are outcomes that connect to your internal experience: growth, connection, contribution, the feeling of being fully engaged with something that matters to you at a deep level. Kean's research shows that achieving extrinsic goals produces relatively little sustained increase in well-being. The raise, the promotion, the accolades, the recognition, these things feel important before they happen and ordinary after they do. But achieving intrinsic goals, particularly goals around genuine connection, personal growth, and meaningful contribution, produces something more durable. Not permanent, the hedonic treadmill still runs, but slower, with more texture, more resistance to the hollow feeling. The problem is that the world is very good at selling you extrinsic goals and making them feel like they are intrinsic ones. The marketing for almost every aspiration you have ever held, the career, the body, the lifestyle, relationship status, has been filtered through a framework of external validation. You have been shown images of arrival, images of people who got the thing and who look, in the image, like they are finally at peace. What you were not shown is the morning after, the week after, the month after, when the thing is real and present and already fading into the texture of ordinary life. You pursued the image of how you would feel, not the thing itself. And the image, the anticipation, the story you told yourself about what getting it would mean, was where the aliveness lived. Not in the arrival. There is a concept in positive psychology called the impact bias, studied extensively by Daniel Gilbert at Harvard University and Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia. Impact bias refers to the systematic tendency for people to overestimate how much a future event will affect their emotional state. You expect the promotion to make you happier than it does. You expect the breakup to devastate you longer than it does. You expect the house, the degree, ignition to change how you feel in a more lasting way than it actually will. Gilbert and Wilson's research shows that humans are consistently wrong about the emotional impact of future events, consistently wrong in the same direction, overestimating the intensity and duration of positive and negative emotional reactions. The technical term for this predictive failure is affective forecasting error. It is to be a universal feature of human cognition rather than an individual quirk. What this means for you is significant. The version of yourself who wanted the thing was imagining a future self living inside a fundamentally altered emotional landscape, a self who was changed by the achievement in some deep and lasting way. What actually happened when you got there was that you arrived as yourself, with all of your baseline emotional tendencies, your ongoing concerns, your habitual patterns of thought, and questions about meaning and worth, none of which dissolved when the external milestone was reached. The self was not transformed. The circumstance was changed. And a circumstance, however dramatically different from what came before, becomes ordinary within weeks. This is not a failure of gratitude. This is not evidence that you are wrong to want things, or that goals are pointless. Goals matter. Working towards something gives your nervous system a direction, a sense of forward movement that is deeply tied to well-being. The problem is not the pursuit. The problem is the belief that arrival is where the feeling lives. It does not. The feeling, the dopamine, the aliveness, lives in the gap between where you are and where you are going. And the moment you close that gap, you need a new one. This explains why some of the most restless people you know are also, beneath the achievement, some of the most quietly empty. Not because success is meaningless, but because they have organized their entire emotional life around the arrival. Every arrival takes them back to the same baseline they were trying to escape before they even began. So what do you do with this? If the arrival is always going to fade, if the dopamine always collapses once the prediction is confirmed, hedonic treadmill always pulls you back to baseline, what is the point of wanting anything? The answer is not to stop wanting, it is to want differently, and to understand at a neurological level what you are actually looking for when you want. Research consistently points toward is this: the experiences that resist hedonic adaptation most effectively are not achievements. They are not milestones you can photograph or put on a resume. They are experiences of genuine engagement, genuine connection, and genuine growth. Experiences that feel alive in the present rather than promising a future state. Research by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi at Claremont Graduate University on the state he called flow, the experience of being completely absorbed in an activity that is optimally challenging, not too easy, overwhelming, found that this state consistently ranks among the highest in terms of reported moment-to-moment well-being. Not the achievement of the task, but the experience of being fully inside it, where self-consciousness recedes and time distorts, is resistant to hedonic adaptation in a way that external achievements are not, because it is not a destination. It is a quality of engagement that can be cultivated across many different activities and relationships and contexts throughout life. Similarly, social connection, the experience of being genuinely known by another person and genuinely knowing them, produces a quality of well-being that persists longer and returns more reliably than most external achievements. Not the status of the relationship, not the milestone of being in one, well, texture of knowing and being known, the conversation that goes somewhere real, the moment of genuine understanding between two people. That does not adapt away in the same way a promotion does, because it is not a fixed thing that can become background. It is a dynamic, living, renewable experience. And genuine growth, the sense that you are becoming something, that you understand more than you did, that you are more capable or wise or connected to yourself than you were before, this also resists the treadmill in a way that static achievements do not. As growth is a process, not a product, there is always more of it available. The gap between where you are and where you could be does not close when you grow. It reveals a richer, more interesting landscape of further possibility. None of this means you should stop pursuing goals. It means you should notice where the aliveness actually lives. It lives in the engagement, not the achievement. It lives in the movement, not the arrival. It lives in the texture of your days, in the quality of your attention and connection and growth, in the milestone that was supposed to contain it. And it means that the hollow feeling after getting what you wanted is not a signal that something went wrong. It is a signal that your nervous system did exactly what it was designed to do. It drove you towards something, and now it is ready to drive you towards something again. Not because what you achieved did not matter, but because you were never built to rest in arrival. You were built to move. Tonight, you may find yourself in a life that your earlier self would have envied, and you may feel the hollow underneath the ordinary. Now you know what that feeling actually is. It is not ingratitude. It is not failure. It is the ancient engine of human survival, humming quietly beneath everything you have built, asking the only question it knows how to ask. What comes next?